Okay. Okay, cool. So this is going to be a kind of like an assignment. So it's not something that I'm going to grade as harshly as I would a project. For me, as far as grading goes, projects are stuff that I grade a little more harshly. You know, the other thing is assignments are more like kind of so you can kind of get used to it. So for this one, you're going to be polygon modeling simple objects. All right. We are going to do a more complex object with Lightsaber on Wednesday, but these ones are very simple objects. So for this particular one, you need to model a four-legged table, a chair, a plate, a vase, a bottle, either a wine or a beer bottle, a simple house, a Mario pipe, and a pitchfork. All right. It may seem like there's all sorts of little things, but they're very simple objects. You know, you can get done with a couple of extrudes here. We're going to go over how to do all these together in class. And then you also have bonus objects that if you want to, if you're enjoying this and you want to keep trying harder, you can create a wooden crate, a desk lamp, and glasses, you know, as like people wear on their face, and they'll give you 10 bonus points that'll be added to your stuff. So quite possibly you could get 60 points out of 50 on this if you do all of them. All right. All right. So, and these are all going to be done with single polygon objects. Now, I will show you some other modeling techniques that you can use with certain ones, like to use like the bool and stuff like that. We'll go over that, but it's not, you know, all of these can be created with just from a single cube or a single object itself. All right, so I have my layout, how I like it for the most part. This is the standard. There we go. Cool. All right, so first things first, we're going to go and work on the first one. So first thing is a four-legged table. Now, for this assignment and stuff like that, you can be as creative as you want because, you know, not all tables are the same and stuff like that. So, and whatnot. So there are, what the basic shape of a table is more like kind of like a cube. Or would you say, I guess say, so we have our cube here that we're going to start off with our base. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just start off and I'm going to make this editable. All right. Once I have this editable, I'm going to then use my scaling tool and I'm going to shrink this down like this. So we have more of a flat shape. And if I wanted this maybe a longer table, you can kind of create this right here. So I'm going to kind of think of how thick maybe I want my tabletop to be. All right, cool. So from there, we want to think of, okay, so we now need to have some legs added to this thing. Now there's a couple ways that we can go about doing this. All right. But pretty much what we need is we need to have some sort of geometry to extrude out these legs. All right. So one thing that we might do is I might go ahead and I'm going to right click over here. Well, actually, I'll get my face tools selected and I'll go right here. And I'm going to get my loop path cut tool. All right. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a really interesting technique on the way that I kind of try to handle the stuff when I try to mirror objects when I'm modeling stuff, or when I'm trying to do cuts, is that if you can see here, once I do a loop cut right here and I click it, you can see that there is a percentage mark that is on here. So this is saying like on this face, this is now considered cut at the 80-second mark. Now I can either click inside here and then type, let's say like I wanted a 75% cut right there, or I can do it down here. As long as I don't click out of this, I still have access to this. All right. Now, one thing you're going to see here is that let's say if I want to move this over here, and we're going to say that I'm going to put this at the 90% mark because we want to start trying to make geometry or cuts through our geometry so that we can extrude stuff out there. Now, if I make a cut here and I know this is at 80% or this is at 90%, and I hit enter or I click out of it, all right, I now have two pieces of geometry here. But if I want to make this symmetrical, I'm going to have another cut over here. So I'm going to get my loop cut path again as well. Now, if I click over here, you're going to see that, actually, let me click out of here so that I don't have that geometry selected. There we go. There's my loop cut path. I'm going to click right here. And what we're going to see here is that if I go back over here to 90%, yes, it's on this side. But if we're thinking of, if 50% is in the middle, okay, then we want this to be over at 90% again, but 90% is this direction, but we wanted the other direction. What would a percentage point that we want this to be? Yeah. You can right click. If you don't have your tools, you can make sure you have the correct modes selected, and you can right click.
Every time I right click, it says no object.
Do you have an object selected? You have to have an object because it has to, so you have to have your object selected. Did you make it editable yet? Is it a little triangle right here? This little shape, is it a triangle or is it a cube?
No, it's still cute.
So you got to click this button right here to make it editable.
Yes, but I can see it.
All right, hold on. Come right over there. Yeah. Okay. So here we are. What we're trying to do here is I'm trying to then get a cut that is in the exact same spot, but on this side. Now, as you can see, as I go in this direction, I'm getting close, but I can eyeball this, but if I'm trying to make something very spot on for symmetry, where do you guys think I would have it? This last spot right here was 90%. And as you can see, as my slider, if I go 90% over here, you can see it's way over on this side. Where would I have this cut be? If 90% is on the right side, but I'm trying to go to the left side, what would that be? Huh? Okay, so 50% is right in the middle, okay? I made this cut on over here was at 90%. What would I be able to, what percentage would I have over on this side to have a symmetrical cut on this side? 10%. Okay, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to make a cut right there at 10%.
Isn't that 10% of the 90?
You, sir, have caught on. Okay, so the big problem that we have here is that while they may look the same, they're actually different. They're different sizes, because once I made this first initial cut, it was 90% of this whole face. When I made the second cut, it was 10% of the second face minus that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to before I made that cut. Okay. Now here's a trick. If I can go there we go. So this is a trick whenever I'm trying to do some sort of a cut like that, where I know that I need to have like symmetrical cuts right there, is I'm going to make my first cut here, get my loop cut path. I'm going to make a cut in 50%. All right, so that I now have split this polygon face into two equal parts. All right. So I made a cut, and now what I can do here is that when I get my loop cut path again, and I'm going to try to make a cut over here where I want it to be, so maybe that's not going to necessarily be 90% because, let me just try to get like a good even number. Maybe we'll just say there's 80% right there. Cool, 80%. And then when I hit, and I'll go in and I'll switch my tool out. And I'll get my loop cut path again. And then now if I go this direction, I now know that I just need this one to be 20%. All right. Because the opposite of 80 is 20. All right. And so now once I split it, I now have these equal pieces of geometry. All right. It's a little fun trick to do just because it's kind of like saying, oh, hey, I want to make sure that they're equal. And so by doing that, it allows me to make equal cuts on both sides. Now, if I want this big middle piece to be a solid piece of geometry, then I can get like my loop right here. I can double click it. And then and when I double click it, it's going to select the loop of this one right here. And then I can right click and then I can do something along the lines of melt or delete or something like that. I think melt is not the one that we want. We want to do dissolve. So now what happens is when I do dissolve, this gives me a solid cut. Now, the reason why I might want to have a solid cut, solid piece right there is because it reduces polygon count. Now, if we're just learning, you could leave that in. It's not harming anybody. As long as I'm not trying to do anything right there. If it's just an extra piece of geometry and you're learning how to model, it's okay to have those pieces. But if I'm trying to like optimize my polygon count by reducing it, this big piece of this big polygon is less geometry than it is when it had a cut in it. Because that right here is still 4 sides, so that's still technically 2 tries, whereas before, when I had a cut in between, I had 2 quads, which would have been four triangles instead of 3 or 2, sorry. Okay, cool. So I have that set right there. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is I'm going to do the exact same thing on the lengthwise here. I'm going to get the cut in the middle, make sure that's at 50%. I can either double click it right there, or I can go down there again. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to eyeball the first one where I want to kind of this to line up. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of just trying to make a square for my leg to extrude out from. Okay. So maybe I'll just kind of put this for maybe like 45%. Now, if we were doing stuff like with CAD or stuff like that, something that's really dependent on it being precise, then this is not the process you would go about doing this. You would have measurements and you would put those in and stuff like that. When we're dealing with 3D and entertainment stuff like that, 90% of the stuff is just eyeballing stuff and making sure it looks good. Now, yes, we're doing like solid numbers and stuff like that to help us make things look symmetrical, but the fact that I'm pretty sure that this is not a perfect square right here, but it doesn't really matter. It looks square enough for what I want, okay? So I say that's 45% right there. And then I'm going to click another one right over here, and we're gonna try to get 45% on this end. Now, what's the opposite of 45% on the other side of 50%? 55. For those of you that want help with that calculator, we'll just pull up a calculator. So we had, so 50% is the middle part right there. If I subtract 45%, that gives us a difference of 5 units or 5%. So that means I just have to, instead of going down 5 units, I have to go up 5 units. So we have 50, and then I just add 5 units. That gives me the 55%. You see where that's working? 50 is in the middle. So if I go under 50, that's how many units I can go down. And then I just count that same amount of units and I go the other direction or vice versa. Okay, cool. So we're gonna leave that right there. I'll do the same thing where I'll take this out. I'll just right click on it and we're gonna go to dissolve. That gives us nice clean geometry. And now I have this table set up for me to do the next part. So we now need our legs. So I'm going to select these 4 corners right here that I have created. And we're going to use our extrude. Okay. And once I have these selected, I'm going to click and drag. Now with the extrude, I can click it once. The nice thing with extrude is that if you click it once to kind of create geometry, you can unclick it and we can mess around with the offset if we want. Or from here, we can just take our handle that we have and we can just drag it up and down this way. Now, this is one way to kind of create a type of of a table with 4 legs. Another way that we could do as well is that, let's say we want to go ahead and we want to maybe inset the legs a little bit. So that way they're not flush with the edge, because not all, so the nice thing with this here is that a lot of furniture, a lot of items are uniquely different. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can model stuff. Okay, so that with having them come all the way out, that's one way to go about doing it. Another way, say if I wanted them to be inset a little bit, there's a couple ways I could have gone about doing that. I could have I could have had those extruded out. Or extrude these out like this. And let's say if I wanted to have a lip right there. Now there's a couple ways that I can go about doing it. I can just maybe go around this circle right here of this table right here. I'm going to select these all right here in a row. Oops. And I can extrude outwards as well. So I can extrude outwards. This is another way that I can then go ahead, add more geometry. So I'm using the type of geometry that's there to kind of make more and more loops, or not loops, but extrudes and stuff like that where I want. Okay. Another way to go about doing that. So if let's say I like the size of the table that I have, but I want to inset the legs a little bit. Well, what we can do here is I can also then get my inset one. So once I have these selected, I can click and drag, and I'm gonna make smaller legs right here. All right. Now, when I do this, what's happening is that I'm insetting the legs a little bit. All right. And then from here, I can do stuff from, okay, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab it, and then I'm going to do my extrude outwards that way. So here's another type of table. All right. Now, what we can do here too, there's all sorts of things that we can continue doing with this as well. Let's say we wanted to have our table to have a little bit of a lip. Okay. So one thing that we can do is that we can say, okay, well, I want to have a lip with my geometry. And this now I'm going to get into something that's a little bit advanced. I'm not expecting you to do it, but I want to kind of show you where you can kind of use this to kind of keep going. Now, let's say I wanted to have a lip, but I wanted it to be flush with where these legs are. So that it's going to come into right where that is on those edges, and it's going to come out with this edge right there, and that's where the lip of the inset is going to be. Now, the way that we can do this is that we can kind of rework our geometry here. Okay, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select these faces here. And I'm going to select the faces that are next to this. Right here. All right, I'm going to keep selecting these ones. There we go. There we go. I'm going to hit delete. All right. So what this did is that I kind of deleted. Now there's multiple ways that you can do this process inside 3D and also inside any type of digital artwork. There are multiple ways to approach something and to go with that, especially when you get to 3D, especially when it comes to modeling. All right. So what I'm going to do here is that since I deleted that, I'm now going to use my bridge tool here. And I'm going to select, now I'm going to switch to my edge mode right here. I'm going to select this edge and I'm going to bridge it over to this right here. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing over there. And to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what I'm doing here is that I'm going to apply a color to this top right here. So here we go. This is the top of the polygon. Bam. Let me just apply that. Okay, so now this blue top and the bottom of the blue top, you can see that there are geometry. And this one, okay, I'll just delete that real quick. So that way you can kind of see what's happening. So the blue is the top of the polygon. As you can see, I now have a big hole that's in there. Makes it a little bit easier for you to see what's happening. I'm gonna get my bridge tool out again. I'm in my edge mode. I'm just gonna bridge it. So I'm gonna connect this edge to this edge right here. Bam, okay. I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Bam. And then we'll go back over here. I'm gonna bridge this edge over to this edge. And then this edge over to this edge. Okay. Now, other things we can do too is we can also just fill in this hole right here. And then I'm just going to fill in all of these holes with this bridge tool. All right. So all it is just what we did is we just kind of redirected the way that the geometry is flowing and whatnot. So sometimes you have to, you know, I did my cuts and my extrude to get my placement of my legs. And then what I kind of did is I kind of deleted it so I can readjust this next part. So I now have readjusted geometry where I want it. And then what I'm going to do here is I want to go to my face mode and I'm going to select these faces on where I want to extrude downwards. Yes, what's up? Are you on, do you have the polygon face mode? You have to make sure that your object is editable. So it's the polygon, so it's the triangle, and then you have to make sure that you have either the face tool or edge mode, and then you should be able to right click, and then you have your cut tools right here. The bridge tool is also right there. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is we'll say, okay, we want to have this lip, and this lip, what's gonna happen is gonna be all the way around here, okay? And so what we need to do is, what tool do you guys think I need to do to make this these faces to come down or up, depending on how you're looking at it. So if I have this is the way that the thing is, I want to have this geometry go upwards, because right now if I just take these and I pull it up, yes, it kind of brings it up, but I'm not really getting a lip. I mean, I'm getting more of a triangle. I want additional geometry right there to kind of give me like a little bit of an actual lip right there. We're gonna take our extrude tool. So now extrudes, well, we've been looking at extrudes before is about pulling geometry out. What I can do here is I can take this extrude, and yes, I'm gonna pull it out, but what I can do here is I can also pull it up, all right? And when I pull it up, you see that I now have a little bit of a lip right there, okay? So an extrude is not necessarily just outwards, just pulling stuff outwards. You can also push stuff inwards. And what you're really doing when you're doing it in this direction is that I'm extruding, but what I'm really getting here is more additional geometry around it. So as compared to if I pull this out more, I'm getting geometry on the outwards, but over here. Whereas now when I bring it back down, I can have more geometry right there. Okay. So now with that, you can see that I now have a table that has a nice lip. Again, you don't have to do this process. I'm just showing you, tools and how you would use these different tools in different situations. Okay. Cool. So here is a very simple one. From here, if you want to do all sorts of stuff. So like if we are not necessarily modeling for to use a subdivision, if I want to have a beveled edge, I can double click on these edges that I want to be beveled. So I want this to be beveled. I would say I want this whole area to be beveled. Now, if I double click on a line, it's going to try to select a loop. And so that's why when I double clicked it right here is that this is technically a loop, but up there at the top, it doesn't really have it. So it kind of selected a line. And then from here, I can just go ahead and I can do bevel, and I can just bevel it a little bit. And having a nice little bevel is, is nice to have. So this one, we want to add a little more subdivisions right here to get us a nice little highlight right there with our object. So now I have a nice little bevel with my edges right there. Now, if I wanted to also make sure I had a nice bevel with these corners as well. So, I don't want to have a sharp edge right there. then, you know, I just make sure I select them all, use my bevel. And then I should have a nice bevel throughout the whole, these whole spots right there. Now, if I wanted these legs to be beveled as well, I wouldn't necessarily have to select them at the same time as I did that, because they're not going to be touching or connecting, because they're going to be connecting or touching with this line in between, and that's not going to cause an issue. All right. So again, so I showed you a couple different ways to approach creating a table. And this is all done with one object. Now you could always, you know, make a bunch of different shapes and throw them around and kind of place them in the correct spot and stuff like that. But this is kind of like the process that you go about when you get to modeling is like if you can model stuff together as one piece, it's very beneficial in all sorts of different ways. But there could be reasons why you don't want to have them in different pieces and stuff like that. But for the most part, you know, you can do most of the stuff that you need to be in one piece of geometry. One reason why you'd want to do that is the fact that this actually reduces your polygon count, because if I had, let's say I modeled this whole thing and I had these legs as individual objects, I technically have a polygon face that's on the top right there, or even if I delete it, it causes all sorts of problems, and it's quicker sometimes to just kind of pull it out from each other. So here's my cube. This is my table. Awesome. Okay. I got this is a little bit more complex, you know, because I did do the inner extrude the way that I did and stuff like that. But, you know, I just wanted to kind of show you, you know, the thought process on why you use certain tools in certain directions and stuff like that. What's up?
So I noticed that, like, in going through there, you actually created a solid object when you're closing in the faces and all that.
Mhm.
Is that necessary for rendering purposes, or is that more?
You mean when I kind of did it underneath there?
Right, so, you know, before you did the bridges along the edges, it technically wasn't a solid object, right?
It was missing. So like, you know, because there's missing faces in the back. Now, typically when you model stuff, I would model that unless I know that, hey, this is going to be a table that's going to be right there, and I'm never ever going to see like anything that's from a certain angle. But sometimes it's easier just to kind of like just close it up, because just for whatever reason, if the camera just kind of goes underneath there, you know, for whatever reason, maybe you see a shot where somebody's looking down, then you're going to be able to see through the geometry. It looks incorrect. So when you're modeling, sometimes you're going to model stuff that might not be there. But it's really dependent on, there's a lot of things that come into how much you're going to model when it comes to 3D, because it could be depending on the scene. So if this was a model for a scene that's for a table that's going to be really up and close, then we would add even more geometry, more detail to it. But if this is going to be a table that's going to be way out here, you know, it doesn't really matter on how much geometry. Even at this point in time, I probably wouldn't even have the bevels on there. I wouldn't have as much geometry. I would try to reduce it as much as possible, just because we don't need it to have like all these additional resources for something that doesn't really matter. And so that's where it's like a lot of stuff on the reason why people do certain things is dependent on the project. So it's hard. I know that's kind of open and question, but you know, it's really dependent on the project. So on why you would add more geometry or less geometry and stuff like that. Just it really depends on what it's going to be used for. So like if it's going to be a table that's over here, I probably wouldn't do the bottom part pulling it up. But if it was something like, hey, it's going to be somewhat closer to people and they may want to use that, this is a little more interesting than just having a flat bottom like that. So yeah. You know, and if this was like a table that it was going to have like where somebody was going to be underneath there, like if you ever seen those tables where they have a leaflet and stuff like that, there's all sorts of additional pieces of wood that would be right there. There's a lot of ways that you can add more detail to it, make things look more interesting than just kind of just a blank space right there. So, okay. So here is my table. Now, if you want to throw all of your objects into one thing and you want to be able to leave them all in the center of the area, we're now going to learn about layers. All right. This layer tab. So if I go over here, it's my attributes tab right here. Yes, what's up?
When I try to do the lines.
The line,
on the table, I can't dissolve the one that goes.
oh, that cross. So
It dissolves everything.
okay, so what you have to do is go to your line mode, not the face. Select. So let me add this back in here, so it's very easy for me to do that. So just bam right there. I have a line all the way across. Okay. Now, if you have done it correctly or you've been following along, if you just have your line mode and you just double click on one of them, it should loop all the way around, right? If it doesn't, then you can just manually select each of those edges while holding down shift. So if I wanted to add more, I can just hold on shift while I'm selecting these with the move tool. And then what you do is then you can right click and then dissolve. And what you're going to see here is that they're going to go away. Let me come over there. Not a problem. I'd like to do that. So yeah, so you're in the face mode, so you're gonna go to your line mode. Okay, and so what? What's that? Like that. And dissolve. Okay, so then you get to your face mode, and then you guys click over here to deselect, and then you go like that middle thing, and then hold on. And then you right click to get to your extrude. What's up?
Okay, so why is it like really
Okay, so if you feel like you're then now there are a couple ways you can watch doing this. One, let's do it this way. So double click this edge. And hold on shift. There we go. Now what we're going to do here is you're going to use your scaling tool, and you're going to use this red one, and then you can bring it closer. Now what this does is when you have two objects like that that are opposites from each other, and you scale them, you're not really making them shorter. You're really scaling them. So now you're going to be equally scaling them both together farther apart. So that's why you want to do this. So make sure however big you want it, and then you're going to deselect and then do the same thing for the other edges. Just click out. And then hold on shift, a little bit over there, and then now you're going to use it. So now you're going to be reshaping the side of that. Okay. All right. So let me kind of go over that trick that I just showed Jess about that. So one thing you can do when you're modeling with polygons, and I'm going to go ahead and let me add segments here. Two. Okay, cool. All right, make it editable. Cool. I should have made it 3. Cool. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so let's say we did our cuts here, but I want to readjust where they are, but I want to keep them symmetrical, okay? What you could do is you could try to figure out how to manually do that, you just move stuff over. Or what you can do is you use your scale tool. The scale tool now, when you have these selected right here, works a little bit differently than what you would think as a scaling. So if I see I have my scale tool before, it's all like reshaping the size of stuff and whatnot. But if I have these edges right here and I use the scale tool, what's happening right here? Am I really making these larger or changing? What I'm really doing is I'm moving them apart. But what's happening is that I'm moving them uniformly along this area apart at the same distance. And so that's a really fun thing that the scale tool can do, is it allows you to you're not really scaling, but you're scaling the distance that is from the center point. So what I can do, so like if you were going through here and you say, oh, well, my edges weren't correct, then I can kind of say, okay, well, I need to reshape them. And I'm going to, by selecting each edge, I'm uniformly moving them around so that their placements stay uniform to where they were before. Huh? Yes. So we can do it on this part right here. So let's say I want to make these 4 edges right here, but for whatever reason, these are too big. Okay. I'm going to double click this edge. And if I do that, it's selecting this edge loop right here. I'm going to hold down shift. I'm going to double click this one. So I now have these 2 loops that I want to bring them up a little bit more to make a better square for my legs to come out. I'm going to get my scale tool. And what I'm going to do is, because now these ones, I need to bring them up and down. I'm going to use this tool right here, this handle right here, the scale tool, and I can bring it up and down to reposition where they are on this model. And they're going to move uniformly. So that way I know that this square is now the same size as this square, because the placement they're uniformly being scaled one way or the other. No problem. Okay. Go. Okay, so let's get to going over layers here. I'm gonna have my object selected. I'm gonna go for I have my attributes area on the side right here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna select my layers right here. Once I go here, you're gonna see that this is gonna be empty because we haven't created any type of layering. This is the layering is a great way to do additional organizational of your scene, especially when it comes to the objects, because right now with our objects area, unless you have stuff parented and stuff like that, it gets really, really busy and really flooded. Kind of like how when we bring in assets for After Effects and you start getting a lot of them, if you're not putting them in folders, that whole area can get really flooded with stuff and it gets real hard to organize your stuff. So this layers allows you to do a lot of stuff. One is organizational, but it allows you to do other things as well. So what I'm going to do is, with my table selected, I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to do new layer from object selection. Now I could just do new layer as well. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to select this right here. And what you're going to see here is that I now have my object, what it is, the name of it, and then this area, which normally had the double box shape, is now orange. If I look down here, this layer is now orange. This is my layer right here. Once I do that, I have access to all of these things that I can edit my object with. First one we have is allows me to solo stuff. So that means, so right now it doesn't really matter anything because I only have one thing. So if I create some additional objects here, let's throw some additional geometry in here. If I go to my layer, I hit the solo button. What we see here is, one, anything that is not part of this layer is hidden in my objects area, and that is not visible right here. Now, if I hit my render button, inside here it's not being shown, but if I actually do the render for here, they're also not being shown as well. So it allows me to highlight only objects that are in this layer. the visibility one right here, this V turns off the visibility of this. Again, if I do my render right here, when I do my render right here, when the visibility is turned off, this is still visible right here. And if I do this one right here, they're visible inside that render. And so what this does is it turns off the visibility inside here, but it doesn't turn off the visibility inside the render. So why would you want to have an object hidden inside here, but still be renderable? Exactly. So sometimes when you're working on stuff, you may have stuff that are together or they're getting in the way of each other. So by turning off the visibility of the certain objects or the layer, then you can still work on stuff. You're not going to mess up that table whatsoever. I can still work on different parts of it, and the geometry is not getting in the way and distracting. But then when I even if I forget to turn this back visible, it will still render. All right. The next set that we have right here is our renderability. So now if I click this on, nothing changes here, but lo and behold, bam, they're gone. All right. Same thing right here. The table's gone. Now, why would I want to do that?
I don't know, so it can be like a placeholder while you're editing other things, and when you render it, it's not there.
That's a good example. That's a good example. Look at that. Good job. So inside 3D, maybe maybe I'm using this table, but the table is going to be done with fluid dynamics. So it's going to be a water table. But I want, with everything else being on there, I want that they have some sort of geometry there that I can place everything or as a placeholder, but I don't necessarily want to render that table out. So by doing this, I can have that representation inside this 3D world, use it, but not render it out, not worry about being rendered out. Other things that are important is that sometimes when we do dynamics, and we're not going to do dynamics at all, so unfortunately, we don't have enough time, but dynamics can be used where you can have a object be a physical object inside your 3D space and it is interacting with different objects, but then we don't necessarily need to see that. So a good example was more than a couple years ago. There was like an Apple one where they had somebody dancing around, but it was like just a bunch of hair that was just following to the beat, but it was obviously attached to some sort of geometry. So for the hair particles to be attached to a object, then what all they did is they made something, and then having that person dance would be a lot easier to visually see them than to see a bunch of hair particles moving around to animate that. So they could animate that and then hide it, and then you just get that look of just hair just bouncing around, but the hair is still interacting with the geometry, but you can't see it. So that's a reason why you do that as well. Okay, so there we go. So the next one that we have right here is that this will hide your objects from your objects area. So let's say if I had a patio that I individually modeled all of the planks and I have them all inside here, and it's a big pain in my ass. They're taking up a lot of space. I don't want to deal with this stuff. It's taking up too much over here. I could just add them to my layer, and I could turn this off. They're not gone. They don't unrender. I can still see it. They render perfectly fine, but it just cleans up my workspace right there. So it just kind of removes it right there. The other thing that's real nice is that I don't accidentally select it. Now I can still select it. Oh, no, they changed that. Cool, awesome. So when it's not here visibly, oh no, I can select it. There we go. I didn't have that mode. So okay, so what I have right here, I can't select it from here, but I can still select it inside my world. All right. The next one that we have right here is our lock tool. So what does that do? Once I click that, you can see that my table is now not selectable right here. It's still here. It's grayed out. And also I can't select it inside here. So this is a great way to say, hey, I have these placements right here. I don't want to accidentally select this stuff and move it. I can then just throw it in this layer and I can lock it right there. And then sometimes this lock can be added with this right here. And so that way, all of this can be moved out of place, and then I just have these things to deal with. So some scenes might have objects locked and hidden. And so then that way, maybe we're doing a scene and we have 3 or 4 characters inside there, and all the characters have their little things inside here. And I hand the scene off to an animator, and they don't need to move any of the objects inside here. They're just having characters act with this background. I could then have the scene set up with everything locked, so that way they don't accidentally select it, makes their jobs a lot easier. And then also we just hide that stuff because they don't need to deal with that stuff. They don't need to look at that stuff. Makes things a lot easier for people as well. So having those 2 in conjunction worked really well together. So there's some other stuff here that has to do with dynamics and turning things on or off, but we're not going to get to. But those are the major things for you for this project. So what we could do here is we'll say I have this table, and I'm going to rename this one as my table layer. Is that I'm going to turn off the visibility, and then I can turn off my layers right there. Okay, and so now what I can do is okay, cool. It's like I have a new scene, but I still have my table that's here. I could even leave the visibility on or off, whatever. Or maybe I just keep that visible so that you can see that you still have that object on. I go back to my attributes and I work on the next object. Okay. See how that can be very beneficial with this tables. Now, if you, for this assignment, if you want to send me multiple C4D files, that's fine. If you want to do them all together, that's fine as well. All right. Cool. So next object, let's work on the next object. Next one is a chair. All righty. So what object should I start with for the chair? We're gonna start with the cube again. Cool, excellent. I'll get my cube. I'm gonna make it editable. It just makes my life so much easier. And then we're just going to think of the seat right here. And we're going to kind of do the same process right here with how we did the table. All right, so I'm going to go through the bottom. I'm going to get my loop cut path. Make sure it's 50%. I'm going to click it right here. We're just going to kind of go through this whole process. Maybe I'll say this is 25 just to make things easier on myself. Oops, I don't think that's the 25. There we go. If you don't like opening your tables again, or your windows again, you can right click and then you have these double dots right here. And this will make a pop-out window that stays there, it doesn't go away. So if that makes the things a little bit easier on you, nothing wrong with that. There we go. I'm going to put this somewhere here. I think I said 25%. Huh? What's up? Which one? Oh, to get this right here? If you, any of these windows, and even with like any of these ones right here, you see that you have like this double dots right there. So if you want that to be a pop-out window that stays right there, you can click on it and it'll create a pop-up window. Now this doesn't do like some software when you create, and I think like Illustrator and some of the Adobe stuff, like when you make a pop-out window like that with a window tool, is like it's no longer available elsewhere. I can make multiple ones of this create one. It's just going to keep making new windows. So it's not, so I could have one that's way over and my other window over there. You know, if I'm running multiple windows, whatever's easier for you. It's nice to have that option to have it still there, or you can just go back right here. It doesn't take away. It's just, you're just creating a window right there. All right, 25, I'm gonna go over here. This is gonna be 25. Sometimes you'll see that when you are doing a cut, you don't necessarily have to go to the opposite. So like this one was a 25% cut. And when I went over here, this is still a 25% cut. Sometimes it's like that. So sometimes you get lucky and you just say, hey, cool, I did 25% cut right here. And I go over here and to get the same one, it's 25%. And the reason why I know it's 25%, because if I go 75%, it's on the wrong spot. So then I know it's just gotta be 25%. So it could be. I haven't really thought too much about it. Because I'm just like, okay, cool, it worked right there. But it could be the way that the geometry is flowing or whatever. But I just know that, you know, if it's 25%, you know, and it's not, and 25% is on this side, then I know that I need to go to the opposite right there. So, all right, cool. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to get my loop path cut again. We're just gonna do 50% right here. Cool. I'm gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna try to figure out where this is probably 75 right here. Get my cut right here. And again, this one worked out to 75% as well. Cool. I have those. Now, if I want to clean this up, I can always double click these right here and I can do my, actually I have my dissolve right here. And I can make those nice and clean if I want. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my legs right here. And I'm going to extrude them. Extrude, cool. Excellent. We'll figure out, you know, we're just gonna figure out how big the legs are gonna be. We're just gonna eyeball it right now. Cool. So now that I have this is more like a stool, you know, then what's one part of a chair that makes it a chair? The back. Okay, so what do you guys think I could do with that? Yes, we can extrude, exactly. Now, we could just take this right here and we could extrude it, you know, up right here. And that gives us a nice little thing. But let's say if we wanted this to be a little bit thicker, like we wanted the back to be a little bit thicker. What we can do here is I can select, get my edge tools right here. I can select these edges right here, these three right here. And as long as I don't select the ones on the side, I can increase the area of what I'm going to extrude out of. Okay. So as you can see, as I'm moving stuff around here, this is not editing anything with my legs because I have this, you can see as I move it left to right, that, let me see if I can turn off my world grid, there we go. As you can see, as I move it left to right, you can see it's not editing anything right there, but it's just changing the position of this one right here. So I'm going to eyeball it, see where I like it. So say it's a little bit, we want that back to be a little bit thicker. Perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. And then we're going to get my faces, and then we're going to go right here. And now we're going to extrude. Again, I'm going to pull this up. I can just do right there, and I can just pull it up right here. All right. Cool. Now let's take this to the next step. Some chairs have some nice little cool little designs in there. So let's say if we wanted to do a, let's say if we wanted to do an X, because like sometimes they have those X shapes right there. So what we can do here is we just have to figure out, so the thing that we want to do is we want to be able to make the shape with the geometry that's going to give us our pattern that we want to cut out or punch out. So what I can do here is I can just get real creative here. I'm going to get my loop cut right here. Since this doesn't really matter where it is, we're just going to kind of eyeball it where we want it. Right there. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out how tall I want the cutout to be. So it'd be right here. And then I want to figure out how small or how far down I want the cut to be right there. So I now have this kind of blocked out for that. And then I might do something in the middle right here. and I'll make this 50% exactly. So now I have, if I look at the faces here, I have these ones right here, okay, that I can use to cut out stuff. All right. Now, we might go ahead and try to do a little bit extra stuff to this object. So if I want to make this shape, and if I can kind of get, so let me draw this on the board so you can kind of see what I'm kind of thinking. So here is my back that I have right here, and here is my current geometry. All right. So we want to do something where it's like this, like an X. So if I add mine, this is my geometry right here. Oh, not right there. That's just over here. This is my current geometry right here. So what I need for me to get this right here is that I need to have a cut that's going to go right here on the bottom. And if I do a loop cut, it's going to go all the way across right there. And the same thing right here. And then I need a loop cut that goes up vertically, which then would also kind of come up right there as well. I think this one. And the same thing right here. So I need to add a cut right here, a cut right here, and a cut right here, and a cut right here. So I need to make 4 cuts. Does that make sense with you guys? So this is my lines that I have right now. Oops, I don't know right there. Sorry, where I need it. So there's my geometry that I currently have. So all the dots are where I need to add a cut. Again, this is more advanced stuff. Again, just like I showed you with the table, you know, this is more advanced stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my geometry. So I have my line right here. Let me get my lines right here. So I have my line right here. I have my line right here. So I need to have a line that's close right here. So what I can do is I get my loop path again, and I'm going to somewhat click. Since I eyeballed these ones, it's not going to be 100. Well, actually, I didn't eyeball because they got to work right there. So I can make a similar cuts right here. So I can go over here, and we'll say that I want the X to be, say, at 80%. Cool, right there. I'm going to go right here. Same thing. Well, but this is on this side. So what is that right there? What's this 20% right there? So yeah, so what I'm kind of doing is I'm kind of cutting out these placements so that when I get back through here, I'm going to go ahead and reassign, reconnect them with cutting out faces and stuff like that.
For example, I have 2 lines.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, you're smart.
So if you look at this one, it kind of goes up like that. With this one, Pull it up. You probably selected this and then you screwed it out. Now this is very okay. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna select this, the faces right here, we're just gonna delete them. And just get our bridge tool. And then we click over, and now what we see here. Now let's bridge over and select it. And this thing. And now we should be able to select these three together. Next three. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the process of adding this stuff. Yes, what's up?
So is this chair now in its own layer, or do you have to create a new layer for this object?
So if you want to do the same thing where you hide it after you're done with it, you'll make a new layer for it, or you could throw it into it if that as well. So you can make that also part of that layer, and you can just rename that as well. Either one works. Okay, so I'm gonna go do the same thing here. I need a cut right here, and we're gonna say this is say 35. And then I'm gonna go down here, we're gonna do the same cut, and we'll say that, oh, that's the opposite, so that's not, let's see, 35, that's 15, right? So that's, calculators are fun. Calculator. So if I have 50 minus 35, gives me 15 units plus 50, 65, there we go, cool. 65, there we go. Cool, so I have this cut right here for my X, and I have my cut right there. Now, if I look at my shape right here, I think the thing that I have that I need to add is a cut for this top part to be connected and a part right there. So if I really think about it, I need to also have a loop cut that goes right here and a loop cut that goes right there. Again, this is more advanced stuff. You guys don't have to necessarily do it. I am just showing you, ways to go about doing this stuff. Okay. If you guys just send me the chair with all this extra stuff, that's fine as well. All right, cool. So there's that, and then I just need to make sure that I have a cut right here. We'll say this is, we'll make this 40%. And then I'm gonna cut right here. This is another 40%. That's fine, cool. So now what I'm going to do here is that this is gonna be a little more difficult. And the reason why I kind of drew that on the board, because it's gonna make it a little bit easier for me to figure stuff out, is that we want to readjust where things connect. So now, again, this is more of an advanced thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm reworking the flow of my geometry, because right now everything's just like in lines and stuff in a grid. But I want this to come down. I want this to come down right here, and then I want an edge to kind of go this direction to hit right here. Okay. So I want this to go right there and right there. So there's a couple ways I can go about doing it. One way is I'm going to get my line cut tool, and I know that I have this major part right here, and then this is my top of my X right there, right? Or this is my middle part. Oh, this is my top of the X. So I'm going to take this right here. I'm going to take this cut tool, and I'm going to cut, and I'm going to drag it right there. Okay. What this does is that I now have this shape that I'm working on creating. Okay. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my line cut tool again. This is the top part of my X right here, and I'm going to make another cut that's going to be, well, actually, if I look at it, I missed something here. So let me go back. Does anybody see where I might have missed something? One thing that I missed, if I look over here, is that these parts right here need their line right here. So I also need to cut that goes right here for these edges on the outside. This will make all sorts of sense in a second, so don't worry about it. I'm just kind of laying the groundwork. So I'll just go back here, get my loop cut. This is going to be for the inner side of my thing. Let's say put that at 30. That was a good one. Right here is, so that one is going to be 60. Boom. There we go. Cool. Let me get back to my loop cut. So one thing I can do is that I'm going to get my line cut right here. So this is my center point. I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to have this go right there. Oops. Right there, and have it click right there. And then quite possibly I could have it go up in this direction right there, because that is the top part right there. So right now, all of these can be gone. And we'll get into that in a second. And then we're going to do the same thing right here. This is my inner part right here, and I'm going to bring it right there and then down right here. As you can see, as I'm doing this, it's starting to look more and more like an X. All right, I'm going to get my line cut right here, right there, and right there. This is not the best looking X, but you know, this is just right there and right there. But at least they're symmetrical for the most part. So there is my X. Okay. Now, what I can do here is so you can kind of see where I'm going with this, is that I know that this, and this are going to be gone and cut out. And then I'm going to use this, and that, and that, and that. That's going to be cut out. Yes, you hit the delete button, which is different than the backspace. Backspace, well, on the Macs, they're the same, but sometimes some software like the backspace is actually a different key for them than the delete key. And I have a habit of doing the key. So one thing we have right here, as you can see, is that you know, I have my shape right here, but it's not all the way through because we just have to do kind of the same thing right here on this side. Very simple, because we already have the groundwork all set up. So again, so right here to right, was it right there? Where did it go? So, okay, went to this middle part right there. There we go. There we go. Line cuts. This is my line cut tool, which is a great tool. Bam, bam, bam. Again, you know, like I said, you guys don't have to do this. I'm just kind of showing you, you know, advanced stuff so that you can see what is out there with these different tools. There we go. And then I'm just going to select all of these things. Now, there is something when you get to selecting stuff, is that the order on which you select things can be important, just because sometimes these handles get in the way, not because of that's really important on which ones you select. It's just more, sometimes I select in a certain order, knowing that the handle is going to be in my way in a different spot. And that's just something you get used to when you're learning how to do stuff. I delete it. Cool. So now I have this X, but it looks like I have like this cutout. So what tool can I use to kind of make this look more, a little more solid? Huh? Bridge tool, exactly. There we go. Get this bridge tool, and we're just gonna click and drag it this way. We're gonna have fun making this. So what the process that we did, it was very subtractive, and now we're kind of adding more geometry back into it. So as you can see, when you're modeling stuff, sometimes it's okay to remove stuff than to add more stuff to it. All right. So I'm going to go through this whole process. You just take your time on this stuff. And a lot of times when people are modeling, they're jamming out to music, concentrating on stuff, and just kind of letting the modeling take over. It can be very zen when you're starting to model stuff. All right, I'm gonna keep going through this thing. What I'm doing is I'm selecting these edges and I'm being very careful on where I am clicking and dragging it. The nice thing with Cinema 4D is that they have a nice visual representation of where it's going to look like it's going to happen. I selected something that was incorrect. I'm just going to unback and do that. Just make sure that you just take your time. No rush. There we go. Cool. Again, now there are probably other ways that we could have accomplished this task and stuff like that. And really none of them are correct or incorrect as long as it works for whatever you're doing. And there are no problems with it. Nobody cares at the end of the day. Cool. So now I have a solid thing right here. Now from here, what could be an interesting thing I could do with this? What could I do to enhance this and maybe the pattern that I have right here that I cut out? We can change the colors, yeah. But what we could do is we could always then just take our faces right here that we have of this cutout. All right. And we'll select the backs as well. As you can see, sometimes they get in the way, those little handles. So if the handles get in the way, sometimes you just have to change your view of what you're selecting. Cool. Now I have these, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my extrude. I'm going to extrude inwards a little bit. Now that one made, right. What I might do, extrude outwards, and I go inwards. Yeah, we can try extruding inwards. I don't want to get too much into how to do this. I don't want to blow your guys' mind too much. Now, if I did want to make that smaller, then all I would do is I could do something like this, and I would rework the loop on there as well. Or what we can do instead of doing that, I can take the faces of the opposite way. So instead of having that go in, I can then just take the faces here around it. And I'll just do this front spot right here. And we'll go to the opposite. So if maybe extruding it in that direction caused issues, then if I extrude outwards a little bit with this part, I extrude outwards this way, gives me that the same look of the cutout right there. So sometimes it depends on what it is, and there could be all sorts of ways to approach things. So like this cutout, I could have shrunk that down and added geometry and stuff like that. But sometimes the opposite is just as can be worked out as well. So then grab this. We're gonna keep going this way. Bam, bam, bam. And then I just extrude out a little bit this way, bam. And so now I have a nice little inlet with my chair and whatnot. All right. Cool. And I'll make sure I name this chairs. Cool. And I can add this to this layer right there, table, and it's gone. There we go. Cool. We are going to have a plate. Now this one's not going to take as long as the other ones did. The plate's pretty easy. But what shape would you guys think you would want to start with the plate?
cylinder.
So we have heard cylinders, we've heard a sphere, a disc. All right. Any other ones? An oil tank. There we go. Okay. So here are our shapes. Now, typically when I go and I model these, I'm going to just select them all and just make them editable. I want to think of, either, there are some options for each of these. So like if I selected the sphere right here, let me scale this down a little bit. I'm starting to get some sort of a shape right here. Maybe before I made this editable with the sphere, I could have gone to my attributes, and then there is the option to have it a hemisphere. And I could always move that around. Now that doesn't give me any type of depth inside there, and we can kind of deal with that as well. And we can just flip that around. That's pretty easy to do. With this sphere, let's have this rotate around 180. Okay, so that could be a good spot. This doesn't really need this one. Also, you can probably start with that as well, and maybe see if we on this oil tank we can see that maybe if we have a slice, can we? No, not a slice, but we can't have the top part. But there we go. So we'll just leave that right there. So we'll have these ones right here. The only one I really edited was a sphere. We'll make them editable. Let me start with the sphere again. So I'm going to go ahead and get the scaling down. You can bring that in right here. Pretty much have a nice. Now, the only problem with this one is that there's no thickness to my object here. So if I look at right here, it's all a single one. Now, what we can do here is I'm going to do my rectangle selection. I'm going to select all of these polygons right here. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to do an extrude. And I'm just going to extrude it down a little bit. Now, the problem with this is that you can see that it's still kind of flat, but I just have that lip. Now, if I go to my extrude tools right here, there is this tool called a create a cap. What this does is when I select that, is that if it leaves a space, it leaves the original face of where it was. So that this is the original face of where it was, and then it's just extruded downwards. Typically, if we're extruding like we did with the chair, we don't want to have those caps on, because what's happening is it's leaving the initial face that you extruded out from inside the geometry. So if you're adding additional geometry to your object, that's not going to be seen whatsoever, because it's going to be inside your object. All right. So here's one plate right there. Cool. Awesome. We got a plate. The disc, we can let's work on the disc. So let's do the same thing right here. So what we could do here with this disc is that I want to make this a little bit more of a round shape. So I'm going to take this center point. I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. So that gives me a little bit more of a dip. And then what I'm going to do for this one is that I'm going to have this dip down just a little bit. Let me have it go right here. I'm gonna, because we're gonna keep working on doing more. I'm going to have a spot where there's a little bit of a lip right here. So I'm going to put a ring cut around right there. And then I'm going to go back to my center point. I'm going to bring that down a little bit more. So what that does is that it gives me the nice little flat, more flat lip right up top right there. And then I bring that down. And then just like my sphere that I have, this is just a flat object and we want to give a little bit of thickness to it. Then what we can do here is that I can go ahead and select all of these faces, and I'm just going to extrude outwards a little bit. So now I have a nice plate. Both are acceptable. Maybe this one's a little bit nicer of a roundness right there. You know, we can, you know, you could always add more and more to it because like, you know, it depends on how close you want this plate to be. Is this place going to be on top of the table? It's not going to be picked up. So you don't need to see the, you know, like when you have a plate, it has this is rounded a little bit, but it has that little bit of a lip that's underneath there. So if it's something that somebody was going to hold in their hand, then maybe having that might be important or stuff like that. Maybe not. Plates are all sorts of different. So I'm sure you guys seen plenty of plates and stuff like that. Right here. So we have, next one we have our cylinder. There we go. I'm going to select this and I'm going to scale this down a little bit. Bam, bam, bam. This nice thing with this one is that it already has a little bit of a thickness to it. But let's try a little bit different approach with this one. So I'm going to get my faces right here. I'm going to get my live selection tool. Now what this one does is that when I click and drag on something, it will select whatever I mouse over. So since these are all faces, you can see that it only selected those interfaces. This particular one, we're going to do, again, you guys don't have to do all these multiple ones. I'm just showing you different ways you can go about doing it. Maybe this one, we're going to have it do an intersect so that it's going to have a lip. You know, maybe this is more one of those like plastic ones that you get at Walmart when you're on a shoestring budget and stuff like that. You don't have the nice fancy ones, you know, or the one that you give to a kid because, you know, they're messy. So that we have that nice lip, and then we're going to extrude downwards. Now this one again, I left the create caps on, so we don't want that. So there, we're going to turn that off. And then here's a nice plate. You know, maybe I don't want to make sure it goes all the way down, but there's a plate that has a lip like that. All right, cool. And then let's do the same thing. Let's see what we can do with this right here. So what I might do is maybe actually like this is more almost like a bowl. So let's scale it down just a little bit. And when I scale it down, what we're going to see right here, let's look at this in a nice orthographic view. So when I scale this down, what we're going to see is that we have this kind of a bowl shape right here. When I scale it down, you see how it's kind of changing a little bit. So it's not going to be as bowl-like when I scale it down a little bit. All right, cool. So I have a nice shape right there. And what I can do with this is, let's say, okay, well, I have that nice shape. I'm going to actually select this. I'm going to get my rectangle selection tool. And I'm going to select these polygons that are right there. The way that the rectangle selection tool will only select items that are inside of this area. So while my mouse selection tool kind of went halfway to this part, it's actually not going to select that set of polygons because of the fact that it didn't go down and encompass the whole thing. So I'm going to take those and then I'm just going to delete these. So I have this right here. And maybe I'll go to my edge tool right here. I'm going to double click to get my ring, and I'm going to bring this down. All right. Now from here, we can do all sorts of fun stuff here. Let's go ahead and let's get our faces right here. And I'm just going to go around. I'm going to select the outside face. So there we go. There we go. Bop, bop, bop. And let's select. Actually, we'll just select. I think I could just select the whole thing. Yeah. We're just going to select the whole thing again. So we want to give some thickness to it. There we go. Get an extrude, and we're just going to extrude out a little bit to give our object a little bit of a thickness to it. Cool. Now let's give this one, a part where it kind of sits down on the edge right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my loop path cut, and I'm going to determine how thick I want that to be. So I'm going to make it right there. And then all I do is I go ahead and I select this loop. Bam, bam, bam. Right there. bam, 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 and I'm going to extrude downwards. So now I have a plate that has a little bit of thing. We just want to make sure it goes down to where it's past where that is right there. Cool, excellent. So now we have multiples. Now this one, when I did the extrude, I probably should have, yeah, well, not bridged it. I probably should have made sure that the crate caps was on, because that keeps that right there. There we go, cool. There we go. And now I have a plate that's right there. So now with using the 4 different shapes, I have a bunch of different types of plates. They all have their own thickness, their own shapes, and but not. So all of them are valid. So these are all plate. Copy, paste, paste, paste. If you are in the process of naming stuff and you want to do a bunch of them at the same time, if you get into this edit mode where you are editing their names, you can hit up and down on your arrow keys, and you can go up and down and name stuff as you go as well. So that can make things a lot easier. Yep, it keeps that. But if I go too far where it's not, doesn't have everything selected, it kind of gets out of that right there. So if you're trying to rename your stuff, again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select these all. I'm going to go to layers, I'll go to layers, and then I'm going to add objects to layer. I have this selected right there. There you go, add objects to layer, it adds them all together right there. Bam. Cool, excellent. Next one we have is a vase or a vase, whatever you guys want to do it. All right, so if I was going to start off with this, which one do you guys think you would want to start off with? For a vase?
Oh.
A cone? Okay, a 2. All right. Any other shapes you guys think you could start off with for a vase? The torus. The torus is the donut. Okay. Oh, these two are very similar. And then maybe we'll do like a cylinder. We'll do that one as well. Cool. So if I wanted to do something like with this cone, we'll save the cone for later. So we'll start with the cylinder because it's probably pretty simple. Now again, just like your tables and chairs and stuff like that, bases come in all shapes and sizes and stuff like that. So design wise, it's going to be different. So again, I'm going to go select these, and maybe what I'm going to do is maybe I want to have a nice thick bottom part. So I'm going to select this ring right here. I'm going to get my scale tool out. And now what I'm going to do is, instead of going one direction, because if I go to one direction, it's going to only go right there. If I want them to go uniformly, I'm going to get this handle right here, and I'm going to pull them out that way. So nice thick bottom. All right. I'm going to select these two right here. I'm going to bring them in a little bit so that gets a shape like that. So I'm starting to make a thing. Maybe I'll take the bottom right here and I'll shrink it in just a little bit. Now, if I feel like this is a little bit too sharp right there, I can do stuff like, I can create a bevel right there that gives me some nice shapes right here. I can do the same thing right on this loop right here. I can use these to create this bevel There we go. I can use the bevel to help get me a nice smooth transition from here. All right. All right. And as you can see, the reason why it's starting to get less smoother is because I'm adding more geometry. And then technically, because I'm not really having the object, well, that's probably some weird stuff that happened with. I think I did bevel multiple times right there by accident. There you go. So I'm getting more geometry to get the smoothness. Now with the bevel, what most people think is you have like a corner or an edge like that, and then it kind of rounds it out. Well, what we did is that while I did not have a corner or an edge, I'm using the bevel tool to round out this shape. So this is a tool that is kind of, yes, I am beveling it, but, and however much I want to make that smooth is determined how many subdivisions I have. I'm going to double select this. I'm going to double select these. Maybe I'll get these both going at the same time. We'll have an equal bevel. That's going to happen right there. A nice smooth transition with there, and then I can double click this one, get my bevel out right there, So that's all fine and dandy, but then we have to throw something inside here. So how would I go about doing that with this? Well, how could I make a hole inside here? Oh yeah, that's going. So we're gonna get our we get my face tool. I'm gonna get my offset right here, and we're gonna do the inset right here. Create my hole however big I want, and then I'm just gonna get my extrude, and I'm gonna go down there again. It's the reason why it's doing this because I have that caps tool on right there, and then I can kind of now when you are making this, depending on what you're going to make with it. So if this is going to be like a glass one, then maybe I want to try to make these as similar in size of where these kind of come down. So I might bring this down right about here in the middle, and then I just will scale these in this direction, so that way they are inside. All right, and then I'm going to extrude again. So sometimes having multiple extrudes are going to work for me. And then I'm just going to look inside right here. All right, and there's a lot going on here. If I turn off these other things, it's not going to get in my way. And so I brought this down, and of course I'm able to read this because I've seen a lot of this stuff. So I brought the first extrude down to where it's right here. And then this is my other extrude right here. I'm going to bring it down to say like right about here. And then I'm going to get my scaling tool. I'm going to scale it outwards. And sometimes I might have to go and look back and forth right there. Okay, so that's good. Right there. So we'll say that's a good base right there. Again, it depends on what you're doing. If this was a glass one, if this was a glass model, I would keep working on bringing this down as much as possible. Try to follow the same contours of this inside, because once we get to adding it as a glass object, we're dealing with how light refracts inside glass. So the shape of it will change the overall look of it. But if this was a solid object, I probably would only go down, to right here, because of the fact that you don't necessarily are going to look inside. But when you have to deal with glass, then you would make it a little bit more. So there's a Voss that we have right there that we did with a cylinder. Next one we'll do Taurus. That's a fun one. Okay, so let's see what we could do with this Taurus. Let's make this editable. I'm going to go ahead and let's make this really tall like this. Okay, that gives me a nice shape right there. But then what I might do here is that I might take okay. Oh, okay, what I'm going to do here, wow, this might take a little bit. Let's get our live selection tool. And I'm going to select this ring right here. All right. I'm going to hold on shift. If you select some things that you want to deselect, you can hold down the Alt key and it deselects. So I'm going to select these right here. Okay, and I'm just going to delete them. Gone. All right, and then what you can do is you can bridge them if you want to. I know there's a lot of geometry right here. Let's see if we can just close the polygon hole. Bam. And I'm going to do the same thing down here at the bottom. Unless it, no, yeah, here's. All right, cool. There you go. Bam. Now, of course, one problem that we have right here is that if I close the polygon hole, we have our we have an end gun. So one thing we can do is we just get our line cut, and I'm going to do single line. I'm just going to cut it across, and I'm just going to kind of keep doing that until I fix that. I can either do a whole, so there's a couple ways that we can go about doing it. Maybe I'll just go and I'll do it vertically like this. That works fine as well. That make things a little bit easier. Bam, bam, bam. Get this cut tool. And maybe we'll just go across this way. I'm just gonna kind of try to make geometry as much as possible. Right there. There we go. There we go. Use my cut tool to kind of connect these, get rid of my n-gons. We don't want n-gons. And that's a 4 right there. That's fine. Cool. There we go. And then I have a vase right here. That's a vase. All right. So next one we have is a tube. So a tube would probably be somewhat similar for this particular one. Let's get our, let's make this editable. Where's my tube? Editable. There we go. Overall, let's make it a nice size. Again, so this is the process they're going to go about doing it. There we go. Here is this. And I know what I'm going to do. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to just delete this bottom right here. I'm going to delete it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this polygon hole right there. I'm going to then take my edges here. We're going to bring this down a little bit more, and we'll do the same thing. Close the polygon hole. And I would go through the same process of closing up the bottom, just like that right there. You know, you can use a, so the closed polygon hole is a great way to close a hole that you have inside there. So let me show you. You just get this closed polygon tool, and it kind of closes your thing. The only thing that you have right here is that it creates an n-gon, but you can also select on your attributes area to quads. And so then if I do that, come on, there we go. I'm gonna select it. I'm sorry, I have like this when I have the big, there you go. So now I have a quads, and so that gives me quads as much as possible. All right. And then from there, I can do all sorts of stuff. If I take my ring selection tool right here, I can make these really thick. Having more interesting ones. There we go. As well. Maybe have this one be a little bit thinner at the top right there. Of course, you know, I can kind of go through the same process that I did with that one. There you go. And then we have is our cone. Now, how would I go about creating a vase with this one? Well, let's see, let's take a look at this. So let's take our cone and make it editable. Probably what I would do with this one, it'd be pretty simple, is that I would get my point right here. And I would just bring this down. Are these not all merged together? Okay, so for this cone, looks like I'm going to have to select all of these one right here. So what happened with this one is that if I select this vert right here, you can see that not all my verts are at this cone part at the tip are not connected. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my rectangle selection tool. I'm going to drag and select so it selects all of the verts right there. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to, where is it? Weld them all together. So I'm just going to hit enter. They're all together. So now once I select this vert, they all should come. Nope, they're not going to bring down. All right. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring one down. Sometimes that doesn't want to work correctly. And there we go. Select them all right here. Then let's get the weld tool and have them all come out down right there. So now they're all connected. Cool. I'm gonna bring this down, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my edges here. I'm gonna kind of bring these down a little bit. There we go. Here is my middle vert. I'm gonna bring that down all the way. Nope, not all the way down that way. And then all I'm going to do is I'll make this bottom part have a little bit of a bevel. There we go. Same thing up here. Have a little bit of a bevel, and now I have a vase, probably the inside as well. I have a vase right there. So here is a vase. And then if I want to make these a little bit taller, then I just select my object right here and woo, there we go. Cool, awesome. Now I have a bunch of different vases. So you can take all sorts of shapes and you can create, you know, different things like the you know, the way that you approach it are going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to go select these all. These are all bases. Copy, paste, paste, paste. Cool. There's my bases. I'm going to go to my layers. I'm just going to go to add to layer. There we go. Awesome. Cool. Rockin'. The bottle of wine is going to be very similar to the vases, so I'm not going to do it. It's the same process, just a different shape. A simple house. This one's going to be fun. All right. So when we are thinking of a house, we'll start with this a nice square. All right. I'm going to make it editable, and then I'm going to scale it up. And I'm going to try to make understand like a size that would be a house. All right, there we go. And maybe we'll make it a little bit taller. That's a nice size house. We're just going to do a 1-story house. You can do a 2-story if you want. Now, I'm not going to worry about too much about the windows right now. We're just going to kind of work on the roof. So we want to have a roof shape. So there we go. And to get a roof, we need to first make a way to have this pop up a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to make a loop path cut in the middle. 50%. There we go. Excellent. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my line right here. I'm going to take this right here, and I'm just going to bring it up. So now we have a basic shape for a house, all right? Now from here, there's all sorts of things that we can do. If I want to have a roof that kind of overhangs a little bit, that roofs do sometimes, I can get my loop path cut. Now, one thing that we're going to see here, most of the time when we use the loop path cut, it works very similar. But what we see here is that you see how it's going to go and follow the height of the edge right there. So now one thing you can do is you can probably just click it right, wherever you think it's going to be. And then we have the ability to now to select the faces around there. Bam, 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 bam. And actually what I might do is I might do the sides a little bit different than the other sides are. So these sides are right here. I'm going to extrude them out just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the faces for these two sides. And I'm going to extrude them out as well. All right. Now you can have that go right there, or then we can just kind of bring this down to try to get that in the correct angle. There we go. So now I have a basic house. Now, we'll say if we wanted to add a chimney to this. So what would I do? Let's try to cut a loop path out where we'd have the chimney. So right there, so right there. And then we'll say we want it to not necessarily be right close, but we'll say it's going to be like right here. Cool. I cut out the space for the chimney to go right here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch from our local coordinates to the world coordinates right here. I'm going to extrude outwards. Okay, so we don't want that to be that many cuts right there. There we go. And we're just going to bring it upwards like this. Here. So now try to straighten that out as much as possible. If I need to make this flat, then I'm just going to get this rotation tool, and we're just going to kind of try to eyeball it as well. If I can't see very well inside there, we're going to get to a side view. We'll see if we can kind of rotate this correctly. And I might have to scale this down a little bit to kind of work that out. All right. There we go. So I have a chimney right there on my house. All right. If I wanted to have a hole in there, then what do I do? Grab that one right there, do my insert in a little bit, and then I'm getting my extrude, and I'll just extrude it downwards. There we go. Now I got a chimney with a hole in it. Okay. So here is a basic house. Now you could add the same process that you would go through adding like, adding the chimney and stuff like that with making cuts and stuff like that. You could do the same thing with the body of this to create space for your door, some windows, however you want to go about doing it. If I wanted to say, maybe this is like one of those like 70 houses and they have like those really big windows, I can kind of like cut this right here. And I can just readjust where it's located. And then I can have an extrude in right there. So I have now like a little, one of those ones that have a really big window right there. I could do, if I wanted a door, I could then get my loop path cut and we'll say, okay, well, here's my door. Now this one, the loop path might not work for us because as you can see, it's following the height of that. So then we just get to this plane cut tool instead, and we're going to say we want this to be world and I'm going to make sure that the coordinate is going to be up and down right here. So I'm going to cut this right here. And so now I have a cut that goes all the way across right there. And if I want this to be a little smaller, I can then just kind of shrink this in. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe I'm going to extrude outwards. And now I have a door. All right. There you go. Cool. So a simple house. I know this was a little more, but you know, I want to have a roof. You want to have something that has a roof and the body, stuff like that. If you want to add more windows, you can. That's the whole process that you can go about doing that. This is my house. It's a simple house. Cool. Rocking. So let's go through the next one. So we now are going to do a Mario pipe. Does everybody know what a Mario pipe is? The big green thing is, okay, cool. So if I was going to try to make a Mario pipe, what would I do? What do you think I would start off with? A cylinder. A cylinder. What is the other one? A tube is a good one too, as well.
No, but like I will put the tube in the cylinder.
Well, we want to do like a one object like we've been doing. So, okay, so we'll do a cylinder and we'll do a cube. Or not cube, but a tube. Now, what we can do with the tube, we'll start with this tube right here. I'll make it editable. Is I'm going to scale it up so that it's as tall as I want it to be. And the nice thing with the tube here, if I look at my geometry, is that I have this ring right here that I can very easily use to create pipe. So what really makes it iconic with this part? Yeah, the flare. So I'm going to get my extrude outwards. Bam. There you go. Yep, there we go, right there. That's all. There's a Mario pipe right there. Now, if I wanted, so I'm going to show you another way to go about doing this. So now this is going to be a different way. I'm going to copy and paste this right here. All right, so what I'm going to do here, make this editable. I'm going to make sure that this is a little bit wider. There we go. There we go. Make it a little bit taller for the most part. Cool. So what I'm going to do with this cylinder here is I'm going to do the same process where I'm going to make that edge right there. And I'm going to do my light selection tool. Hold down Shift, selecting these all. All right, there we go. And I'm going to extrude it outwards. All right. So the big thing that we have right here is that we don't have this hole right here. Now, I'm going to show you a pretty cool tool. I'm going to use this cylinder right here to make the hole for my pipe. All right. So what I can use here is this bool. Now the bool tool is really cool. It uses two objects to make more complex shapes. Now this is not super complex. We could totally do this, you know, as we saw right here, without using these bools, but this is a good example. So I'm going to take these two cylinders. I'm going to make them a child of the bool. Now, when I get to my attributes for the bool, you're going to see that we have a couple different options. When I have that selected, you're going to see that my bottom pipe went away. And what it's saying here is that A, which is the first child, subtracts B, which is that. So what happens is that this B object is going to subtract wherever they're intersecting. All right. If I do A union B, that means that they're going to take these two objects and they're going to have them be connected together. If I have A intersect B, what's going to happen is that wherever my cylinder is intersecting each other, where these two objects are intersecting each other, that's where you're going to see the geometry. This is like a Venn diagram. And then we have the next one is A without B. So what this one is we have is A without B, and it's going to have a cap right there. No, but this is not what we want, because what's happening is that I want they see the pipe, but I want this to be cut out. So we just have to reorder which way they're located. So now what we see here is with the A select B is that now the cylinder, this cylinder is subtracting from there. All right. Okay. So that's the really cool thing with the Bool tool. Now, the Bool tool has all sorts of really cool things other than just modeling. We could also use this for animation purposes as well. So where you could have, if we wanted to look like something is coming from out of nowhere, you could have like a big cube or a shape that you want to have something kind of come out of and be the thing that's going to subtract from it. And then as it's coming out of it, then you're going to have that reappear that way. And so these are all animatable. So if I wanted to, I could have this punch a hole like this inside here. So let me make a keyframe here, go to frame 40, gonna go down here, and I'm gonna put a keyframe. So as you can see, I have the ability to keyframe this interaction with a geometry. Now you can do this type of thing with stuff called blend shapes, but if it's something simple like this, if I wanted to punch out, let's say a logo. So I had a logo and I wanted to punch it out of a, inside of like a steel plate. I could have a steel plate as my first object right here, and then I could have the logo as my object B, and then I could animate the object B going inside the steel plate, and then that could give the illusion of it being punched out. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a blend as well. So if I want to have a machine that it would go down and then it would be punched out, that's a very easy way to go about doing that. It just, again, it depends on what you need to do. So this is a legitimate way to go about doing it. And say if we needed this object to be one thing, then we just take this bool object and I will then make it editable. And so now it gives me, now it might give me a couple different shapes right here because they're separated, but I can always, go back through here and throw those two objects under a connect. And I'll merge them together as one object. So now I have one object right there. Ooh. Okay. The next thing we have is a pitchfork. All right. You know what, pitchfork? Yep, no problem. Cool. All right, so here we go. So let's throw these inside here. These are Mario pipes. Copy, paste. Okay, cool. There we go. Bam, bam, bam. I'm just gonna throw these inside here. Cool, awesome. So we want a pitchfork. So what we can do is let's do this with a cube, because you can model pretty much anything with a cube. All right, I'm going to make this editable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this down so that it's very, very tiny. Right here. It's tiny and long. So if we wanted to make that round, we can fix that with all sorts of different things, but we're just gonna kind of get a basic shape right now while we're working on this stuff. So it's a nice long thing right here. Okay. So if I look at pitchforks, you see that you have this bottom part right here. That's going to be right there. So what we're going to do here is that I'm going to go ahead and determine how thick that I want that part to be. I'm going to get my loop path cut, and I'm going to cut it right here. Then I'm going to get my these parts right here, and I'm just going to extrude outwards. So this is just going to determine on how thick or how wide I want it to be. So maybe it's like this big. And then we just have to go ahead and do a loop cut path. And since those are extruded out the same, I just have to figure out how thick I want this to be. I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'll say we'll say this is 64 right there. I'm going to go over here. So I don't want to do the math. So I do 50 minus 64 gives me 14 plus 50. So it's 36. So I need this to be 36. 36. Cool. Now I have those two shapes. I'm then going to get my extrudes right here, or select my couple of faces for my pitchfork. Get my extrude. I'm going to extrude it outwards. And determining what kind of shape you're going to go with. Sometimes they arch a little bit, but we can kind of deal with that later. So if, let's say if we wanted to have one that kind of like hooks a little bit, that's quite easy to do. So we're going to get our basic shape right here. Okay. And let's say if we wanted these to hook a little bit, then I would probably suggest us, let's get our plane cut path, and we're just going to cut it across right here. Now, the reason why I'm going to use a plane cut instead of the loop is because it's going to cut across my whole object. Well, there's a gap right there. If I did my loop cut path, I would have to do all this, I have to put all those in together. But with a plane cut, it kind of goes all the way across right here. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going, while my faces are selected up here, I'm going to bring these forward a little bit. And maybe I'll go a little bit more. And then, because I have this shape right here already, is that I'm going to select these edge loops right here. And I'm just going to very slowly kind of bring them in a little bit. So it kind of smooths that out a little bit. Now these are really cool. So, but the one thing that we have right here is that our objects are not pointy like a pitchfork. So what we can do is I can get to my point mode. I'm going to, at one at a time, I'm going to select these top 4 verts, and I'm going to do weld. Now, as you can see with that, it's going to weld it right in the middle. There we go. Same thing here. And weld it. There we go. And then the next one right here, and weld it right here. And right there. So now I have the shape. If I feel like I want to have these be curved a little bit more, I can, keep going with my my edge loops and stuff like that. So bam, bam, bam. We're just gonna I'm going to get this selection tool, select all those edges right there. Let's move these back a little bit. Same thing here. Oops, I didn't select them all. Hey, here we go. Sometimes it's easier to select stuff when you're in these orthographic views. There we go. And then I can, if I need more curvature, I can just keep adding more geometry with like these plane cuts right here. Select these edges right here. And I can just slowly add more curvature by adding more cuts, because the more geometry we have, the more spaces we have to have these cuts. Cool. So now I have that. Other things you can do here as well is that I can then select these edges right here, because we want these a little bit more smooth, is that instead of them being square, these edges right here, I'm going to bring them up and I'm going to scale them in a little bit to kind of get that more of a round shape. All right. Pitchfork. Now, I'm not going to worry, like if I wanted to make this to be really round right here, then I could always like select these 4 edges right there and maybe the bottom parts as well, because we want that to be rounded. And I just get this bevel tool. All right, get my bevel tool and I beveled it. And so now my pole is nice and round and smooth and stuff like that. If I wanted the whole thing to be smooth throughout the whole thing, you know, like if I wanted to have a bevel throughout the whole thing, you know, just make sure that you go ahead and select what you want to be beveled. So if I do this whole thing, yes, what's up?
Do all the objects need to be like proportionate to each other?
No. I'm gonna look at it and I say, does that look like a pitchfork? Cool. Does that look like a house? Cool. Does that look like a vase? Cool. All right, so I'm just gonna select all these so we can have a nice smooth bevel. There we go. We'll have a nice smooth bevel on all these right there. There we go, bevel, bam. There we go. And then if this, we want to fix these top parts right here, you know, it kind of rounded out these edges, but we don't want it to be rounded out too much. Or what we can do instead is we can take all these right here and we'll just select all these points and we'll just pull them out, because sometimes with bevels, they get kind of, there we go. And maybe this one is going to be a little bit, the middle one, I'll have the middle one be a little bit taller. There we go. Pitchfork. There we go. Basic shapes. Cool. And then if you guys want to do the bonus ones, those ones are going to be all on you to use the process on creating those. You have till, this one's going to be due March 30th, which is next Wednesday. So not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. So you have plenty of time to work on these. It'll be fun. You know, I kind of went over all of them today in class. So for the most part, except the bonus ones. Bonus ones are on you. Pitchfork. How do you guys feel with modeling these objects? Okay, yeah, I mean, that's okay. That's okay if you guys are okay right now. So this is just, you know, because I know that once you guys start getting into it, you start doing more and more, you're gonna do a lot better with this. These are very simple objects. I'm not gonna, you know, as long as nothing's like super crazy, you know, they'll be fine. So I didn't do anything super detailed with any of these. I think the chair was like the craziest thing that I did. I don't expect you guys to do that. So if you guys just have a solid back with the chair, that's fine. You know, just showing you different techniques for modeling and stuff like that that you can use. Here is my house. Vases. And the plates. chair and the fireplace.